Good morning, everybody. Go ahead and grab your last little bit of drink, and we're going to get started. We have a really robust, fun day for you, so we want to make sure things are moving along. I'll give you just a couple minutes. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. I know people are still settling in. My name is Stacy Dim. I'm the Executive Director at the Arc of Washington State. I want to welcome all of you to this gathering of extraordinary minds and passionate hearts. This is a space designed for thought leaders. So if you aren't thinking of yourself that way, start doing it now. Thought leaders in the field of developmental disabilities. It's an honor to stand before a room filled with individuals who have dedicated their lives to advancing understanding and care and support for people, opportunities for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Your dedication and innovation and advocacy are the foundation upon which this community grows stronger every day. This event, I feel like I'm not talking to the whole group here. Am I gonna mess up the camera if I do this? Sorry. This event, welcome everybody on this side, sorry. This event is the result of one very determined legislator. She's the twin sibling of her brother with significant disabilities, Representative Jamila Taylor. I'm sorry to say, yes, thank you, please. For those of you that haven't heard, I'm very sorry to say that she cannot be with us here today. Unfortunately, her journey over the past month has been quite significant. About 3 weeks ago, she suffered a stroke, and then yesterday, unexpectedly, her mother passed away. And so she hasn't been able to join us yesterday or today. I think that we know, her wish today is that we finish what she started. So join me today in solidarity and spirit to support her vision, if you will. Let me catch up most of you on what's transpired the last couple of days, because in some ways I recognize that you community stakeholders are sort of walking in on the middle of a conversation. Sequestered down the hallway, just down here, have been state legislators from around the country and a very high caliber number of national speakers. They've been reflecting on the past, the current state of affairs, which we all know is very, very interesting right now, and the future. We had legislators representing North Carolina, Iowa, Arizona, Arkansas, Utah, Alaska, West Virginia, Georgia, Nevada, Kansas, Florida, Idaho, and of course, Washington State. Yeah, that deserves a little applause for sure. There were also several legislative and policy staff, and our policy advisor from Governor Ferguson's office as well. This legislative cohort was super energetic and engaged. They were collaborative and ready to work on issues in their respective states on policy and funding to improve the lives of people with developmental disabilities. Representative Taylor's goal is that they will form a bond that gives them support to each other to tackle national threats and ask their National Council of State Legislators to formally support their work. We heard from Representative Roger Goodman, who's on the board of NCSL, that he will absolutely support this effort. So that was a great commitment. As we gather in this space today, Representative Taylor's goal is that we lend support and encouragement to the legislators who are members of the Washington Developmental Disabilities Advocacy Coalition to do a couple of things. Commit to creating a formal policy-making space that spans biennia and creates a long-term plan for shaping the future policy and funding for people with developmental disabilities and their families in our state. We have with us today several legislators who have been in this cohort, and I invite them to say hello to you, to identify themselves in just a little bit. Some of them will be in and out, so we won't have everybody stand up and introduce themselves right now. But it is my pleasure right now to introduce Representative Daria Farivar, who's going to share a few words about the last couple of days.
Good morning, everyone. How are we doing? It is so great to be here and see some new faces, some familiar faces, and generally just be in what I claim as my chosen community. It's so good to see you all. And it is also my honor to act as some sort of an attempted stand-in for Chair Taylor. I'm really honored to do this work in partnership with her and in partnership with all of you. And I know she would be so excited to see this room full of people who are ready to jump in and engage today. Not only did we have great legislators from across the country, we had, I think, over 10 legislators from Washington in the House and in the Senate joining us. I know we've got a couple here today. I think I saw Representative Macri, Representative Gregerson, Representative Hill, and maybe a few more coming in later as well. And over these 2 days, we've really taken time to understand the forces that shaped the disability rights landscape. We've looked really honestly and painfully at legacies like institutionalization and eugenics, and how those histories really continue to shape the systems we have today. And we've looked ahead as well to new approaches that reflect a deeper commitment to community, equity, and choice. And throughout those conversations, one particular idea came into focus, which is that when people who are most impacted by the decisions we make are not just at the center, but they're leading the way, our work is stronger, our work is more accurate, more responsive to people's need, and we are more successful together. This is why today is so important. We're all here today coalescing around lived experience and figuring out together how to move forward. We've taken time to collect the data, understand the facts, to better look at how our systems are working together and maybe not working together. And now it's our job as the elected officials to work with you all hand in hand to figure out how do we move forward together. Which one of these ideas have we been thinking about and developing that it's time to test out and have that conversation with you all so that we can move forward together. I think together is the real key word of importance and the theme of today. We cannot do any of this alone. We have to do it together, and I'm so excited to dig in with you all. Thank you.
And unable to be with us here today was Representative Stephanie Barnard, but she did send a video for us for a welcome. So if you guys could hold. Oh, what's that? Oh, clicker. Where do I click? Hmm? Am I clicking something else? Keep going. Oh. Click again.
Hi everyone, my name is Stephanie Barnard and I serve the 8th Legislative District, that's the Tri-Cities, Washington, as a Republican in the House of Representatives. And I was so disappointed and I'm so sad that I'm not there joining you. I had a conflict on my calendar and I'm currently in Brussels, Belgium with Clean and Prosperous Washington. We're doing a tour and learning a ton. And I'm not going to complain about the chocolate or the waffles, but I do really wish I was there with you for this epic event. When I first heard about this symposium, I was so excited. This national bipartisan developmental disabilities legislative symposium. I thought, you know, we finally, here is a real great opportunity to really develop this cohort and a coalition of those that prioritize the IDD community. So sad that I'm not able to be there, but I do want to thank Representative Jamila Taylor. Jamila, I love you. I'm so glad you're doing well. You are an inspiration. Your passion for this topic, your indomitable spirit are truly an inspiration to me, and I love that we can work across the aisle together for this cause. I also want to thank Stacy Dim and the team from the Arc of Washington for putting this on. I know that is a huge undertaking, and you are dynamic leaders. And to me, being a dynamic leader is something that creates transformational change. And I really do believe that we can do that. And this is how it happens, are events just like these. So you'll all be working together over the next 3 days. You're going to be listening to presentations and having discussions and trying to establish and formulate this working cohort of legislators that really will prioritize people with developmental disabilities and their families. So when I get back, I want to hear how it went. I want to join the cadre and see how we can better serve and really make a change as far as helping with physical, mental, spiritual, cultural, emotional, and even social health needs of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I think that can be done. And the reason why is because this issue transcends party lines. We all have hearts in our chests that beat, and we have empathy, and we feel this to our core. And I really think that should be our North Star, that empathy is something that we can take and find that common ground and really embrace it to benefit all of us, to benefit everybody. And our communities will benefit, our society will benefit as a whole. And when I ask myself, why are the inclusive societies so strong? Well, it's because we're better together. So let's begin to create meaningful change together today. I'm so grateful that all of you are here at this symposium. I look forward to meeting and getting the debrief and joining this cause. So have a wonderful, wonderful symposium, and we'll see you soon. Mwah.
Woo, Representative Barnard, that was great. Kathy, did I miss this great little map that you did? I forgot to show the map. Okay, bring the map back up. Kathy did a great map of all the legislators that came. It's really impressive. I want to make sure I don't miss it. Okay, so this morning, as a continuation of the learning and education, I'm sorry for this. I seem to have the wrong glasses, so I have to bring it up closer. A commendable cadre of speakers came and described sorry, let me start over. As a continuation of the learning and education that state legislators have been receiving, we will be focused this morning on a really commendable cadre of speakers who will show our state legislators what we describe as expertise and resources right under their noses. This is not going to be a comprehensive list of the expertise that's in our state, but it is a nice sampling, I think, of expertise that exists that legislators need to make sure that they're aware of. Then this afternoon, we will have a formally facilitated conversation by the Triangle Associates Group, who have also been here the past 2 days supporting legislators and legislative staff. Let's recognize the weight of this moment and the shared commitment that binds us all. Representative Jamila Taylor's vision serves as a reminder that the work we do is deeply personal, is profoundly impactful, and is inextricably tied to the lives of people with developmental disabilities and their families. This symposium represents more than a collection of speakers and thought leaders. It's a real call to action, a convergence of ideas and experiences that will shape the trajectory of our collective efforts. Representative Taylor, her resilience, even in the face of unimaginable personal challenges, reflects the essence of what we strive for: perseverance, hope, and unwavering dedication to justice and inclusion. Today we stand on the champions of those who paved the way, and we look to one another to carry that torch toward the renewed energy and purpose that I think we'll see in this room today. It's our responsibility to ensure that every conversation held, every policy drafted, and every program envisioned moves us closer to a world where equity is not merely an aspiration, but a reality. In the not so distant past, and still today, new threats around us. Individuals with developmental disabilities have been marginalized, their inherent value and potential are overlooked, and their voices are unheard. But through the tireless efforts of pioneers, who you'll hear a bit about today, advocates, researchers, educators, families, and self-advocates, we've seen a paradigm shift over the decades of time. From institutions to inclusion, from silence to empowerment, the narrative has transformed into one of ability, dignity, and rights. But our work is far from over. So today we're going to share some insights, spark some new ideas, and forge connections that I hope will propel us toward a future where every individual with a developmental disability has the opportunities to thrive and continue to fully contribute to society. I invite you to approach our conversations this afternoon with the curiosity of a learner and the courage of a leader. Let's honor the history that has brought us here while envisioning and building a brighter future that we all think is possible and we know is possible. I appreciate that you're here, and I thank you for being part of this journey. Now let's get us started with some of our presentations. I'd first like to introduce Bill Dussault. Bill is our first speaker of the morning, and I have to admit, a long time connection personally to our speaker, someone I consider an OG, or if you don't know what that means, an original gangster. Bill Dussault is a disability rights attorney in private practice who was instrumental in the passage of House Bill 90, the first special education law in the nation that mandated special education public schooling for children with disabilities. It went on to serve as a model for national legislation that we now know as the IDEA. Bill's also the originator of the Special Needs Trust, now codified for its use in estate planning and public benefits preservation for people with developmental disabilities across the nation. Bill is part of the historical fabric of Washington State. It's my extreme pleasure to know him as a disability law and civil rights attorney that many of you have come to know and appreciated the impact that he's had. He's going to give us a little history and a reminder of why we're here today and to never forget. So thank you, and please welcome Bill Dussault.
I love that picture. It takes ages off me. Thank you, Stacy, for that. I've had the opportunity to create relationships and work with families and individuals who experience disabilities for 55 years now. And with my wife, Kate, my partner, Barbara, Stacy over time, we have represented literally thousands of families, and still do, that include individuals who experience disabilities. And I want to emphasize this, not just individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, but children born with other disabilities, individuals who are blind or deaf or combinations of sensory impairments, individuals with acquired disabilities like traumatic brain injuries, individuals who age into disability, not necessarily age being a disability, but congruent with other disabilities, and individuals who might have traumatic brain injuries or disorders of all different kinds. They have so many congruent needs, and I think it's critically important that we don't now create villages of disability based on label, but instead look at the total paradigm of needs of individuals who experience all disabilities, and not create separation and segregation between our categories, and look instead at trying to create a voting block of families and individuals who have meaningful needs that cross all labels. So I would just say that to begin with. Please, please, as we look at planning and as we look at the service needs of people with disabilities, please be open to looking outside the label, to looking outside the category, and to looking at needs-based services, not label-based services. So let's broaden our scope just a little. Today, what I'd like to share with you is just a few minutes about the journey that all of those families that we've represented for so many years have had. Not my story or Kate's or Barbara's or Stacy's or yours, but the journey of the families over years. We're now representing families in their third generation. I represented a family, Minnie's family, whose son Edward, Minnie lived into her 90s. Edward lived to 104. I was Edward's guardian for 40 years. And during that time, Mary Austin took care of Edward, a generation below. And Jim and Britt, the next generation, took care of Edward. We have family histories showing the needs of those families over a huge span of years now, over over 100 years, with thousands of families engaged and involved, cousins and uncles and brothers and nieces and nephews, and children and grandchildren. And the stories are consistent over time and over all disabilities. We really start the journey. You heard the term eugenics. There was a movement in the first 30 years of the United States in the 1900s through 1930s. The eugenics movement that became an active movement in the United States and was then adopted by Adolf Hitler in Germany as he cleansed the German population of the individuals who were deficient and defective. We had a eugenics movement in this state that allowed forced sterilization of the young women in our institutions. And while it was declared unconstitutional in the state of Washington by a state Supreme Court decision in 1929, the forced sterilization of young women in our institutions continued well into the 70s, with those young women told they were going to get their belly buttons tied to their backbones. That was the way it happened. And it is in our lifetime. How many of you were born after 1970? Just give me a hand. Look at this. This occurred during your lifetimes. This isn't ancient history. This is during your lifetime. As the eugenics sterilization movement, call it what it is, faded out into the 30s, for most people it continued for that institutionalized population until relatively recent years. We saw the development of parent advocacy coalitions in the late 1930s coming out of both Queen Anne Hill in Seattle and Tacoma, with the development of the Children's Benevolent League, which is the original foundation of this arc. And not only this arc, but the national arc. Parents coming together to find solutions. That's where the change in Washington occurred. That's how the change occurred. Not through our institutions, not through our school districts, but through parent and family advocacy. That's where it came from. Let me get there, Ivanova. Give me a minute. In the early 1960s, with veterans coming back, we started to see change. Prior to that time, the prevailing advice given parents who had children who experienced disability was to institutionalize them, or worse, to allow them to die. Down syndrome children with duodenal blockages, well, don't worry about the surgery. Or place them in an institution because their lives are devalued. Let's institutionalize them. And we saw the buildup of 5 state schools, ultimately 6 state schools, including the Francis Haddon Morgan program on the Kitsap Peninsula for children and adults with autism. Surgeries not performed because their lives weren't worth living. But in the 60s, we started to see a change in that. John Halberg, one of our most noted philanthropists, daughter Annie, generated the funding in 1964 for the Experimental Education Unit in the University of Washington, now the Norris Herring Center. What an amazing program that generated national change, because Nori and Alice and Wayne Saylor out of the University of Wisconsin and Doug Guess out of Kansas and just all of Lou Brown created an organization originally called the American Association for the Education of the Severely and Profoundly Handicapped. ASPFA. It was a horrible acronym. So we had to change it to TASH. TASH. How many of you heard of TASH? It is the most aggressive left-wing organization for individuals who experience disability. But it was also absolutely data-based to show that individuals who experience disability can learn. And it changed the paradigm. In 1970, the language in the RCWs, your document, legislators, that referred to individuals with disabilities was absolutely abhorrent. They were individuals with loathsome and contagious diseases, like epilepsy, right? Preventing them from public education because public educators were not allowed to educate them. No state in the United States in 1970, including Washington, required the education of children who experienced disability. Those children, were considered in the RCWs to be idiots, imbeciles, and feeble-minded persons. They were defective children. That was the language our laws used in 1970 during the lifetime of the people that raised your hands just a few minutes ago. In 1970, we saw a year of absolute turmoil. We saw the National Guard mobilized in Kent State University with 4 children protesting the bombing in Cambodia, killed by untrained young men wearing uniforms. Are we close to that today? We saw 10,000 people in the street in Seattle walking down to downtown, and we saw 4 women who were determined with this spirit of change to make change in the United States. They came together, first of all, in 1968 to create an organization called Northwest Center for the Retarded. Jean, do you know the history? Maybe our executive director here today. These 4 women, and I'm just going to introduce them as Patrick's mother, Katie, and Coolidge's mother, Evelyn, and Nada's mother, Janet, and Cecile, a homecoming queen from the University of Washington who lived that life of privilege, who also happened to be the governor's cousin. Went to the University of Washington Law School and kidnapped 2 law students. Said, "You're going to help us." Okay. What do we know? And we didn't know anything, but we trusted our moms. And we wrote a 13-paragraph law requiring, under the Constitution of the state of Washington, Article 9, Section 2, that it was the duty of the state of Washington to educate all of its children. And it became known as the Education for All Committee and Bill. That's where it came from. And that 13-paragraph law mandated the education of every child in the state of Washington. And that 1970 law became the model in parallel with what Tom Gilhool and Frank Lasky were doing in Pennsylvania in the Pennsylvania Association for Retarded Children versus State of Pennsylvania litigation. For the 3 years later, 1973, Education for All Handicapped Children Act. Senator Weicker, then House Representative Weicker, came to us, the 6 of us at that point, and said, "Can we use the name of your state legislation to be the name of our federal special education bill?" We had shown with then Superintendent Buster Brulette, who subsequently became a state legislator out of Puyallup, that there were over 35,000 children with disabilities in the state of Washington in no daily programs. The survey was done to support the law. And we put all of them in public education. What a promise was made to families who involve children with disabilities. Has that promise ever been fulfilled? No. It remains an unfulfilled promise today. Special education for children with disabilities is not finished. Amen. We have more work to do. Janet, one of my 4 moms, before she passed, awoke one morning close to her death and said, "We're not done yet." And we are not done yet. That journey is not finished. But what a terrible mistake it is to think that we can solve these problems through special education. It's only one aspect of what our needs are. In 1973, we saw the passage of the 1973 Rehab Act at the federal level, Title 5, Section 501 through 504. How many of you heard of 504 plans? Okay, that came out of the 73 Rehab Act. It took the federal government over 2 years to establish regulations under Section 504. You saw advocates chaining themselves to the gates, the driveways of the embassies and of the HHS office to make change. And the Disability Rights Organization, and particularly Lucy Gwynn in Mouth magazine, one of just an amazing woman, coined a phrase, Ivanova, I told you I was going to use this, nothing about me without me. And has that come back to today? Yeah, raise your hand, no kidding. And it needs to be our watchword, nothing about me without me. And it's what now, 40 years old. And we established regulations, and we established a law, said no discrimination. And is that job done? No. Again, we've got tremendous work to do. We see the promise of the special education law. Then we look at what else happened during the early 1970s, a period of incredible growth. We see institutional environments, Pennhurst State School in Pennsylvania, Partlow in Alabama, and most notably Willowbrook on Staten Island, a state institution for 4,000 children with disabilities. And we see my friend Bill Bronston, at that point a young medical intern, sneaking into Unit 6 of Willowbrook, a young investigative reporter by the name of Geraldo Rivera, documenting the scenes he saw at Willowbrook, atrocious scenes of 40 and 50 young men and women in a lump on the floor with one attendant covered in their own feces, cleaned by fire hoses. This is in your lifetime. And the attention brought to Willowbrook and Pennhurst and Partlow started to create the deinstitutionalization movement that was actually started in Donaldson versus O'Connor, a 1967 Supreme Court decision. So we see the beginnings of that deinstitutionalization movement, the movement that says, bring your children home. Don't place them out of your home. Keep them where they're safe. We see in the 1980s, Jim Conroy out of Ed Newman's office at Temple University, going to Pennhurst School, again prompted by a United States Supreme Court decision, to start a 5-year longitudinal study pairing an individual in the institution with an individual moved from the institution to the community, pairing the individuals of similar disabilities and saying, how did they do? Now, I gave, just for the heck of it, I knew Jim quite well, and I gave a copy of the Pennhurst longitudinal study to Senator Adam Klein in the Washington State Legislature 20 years ago. Adam started as an attorney in the Institutional Legal Services Project in the state of Washington that Kathy Morrow, another attorney, and I set up with the ARC, funding the program. So Adam knew what was going on in institutions because he lived it as an advocate. The Pennhurst study showed, just as an example, positive outcomes for residents, significant improvements in the lives of former residents who were moved to community-based settings, developmental growth improved faster, increased services, increased happiness, improved independence, decreased challenging behaviors, improved living conditions, family satisfaction, and cost effectiveness, all proven over a 5-year longitudinal period studying the pairs just a typical double-blind kind of study. One in the community, one in the institution, similar disabilities. What were the outcomes? And the outcomes were uniformly positive. And the study has been ignored for one primary reason. The unions in the state of Washington wanted it buried. Because moving the individuals out of the institution and into the community would challenge the representation of the union employees in the institutions to individuals who provided care in the community who were not unionized. And Adam buried the study. In 1990, we see the reauthorization of the Education for All Handicapped Children Act to become the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. At the same time, we saw the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act. You know, as we worked from 1990 forward, we kept talking about Ada's great idea. It was just a way to put IDEA and ADA together. And today, we see the issuance of a decision from the United States Supreme Court using the provisions of the ADA to make it easier for parents to bring lawsuits against school districts who violate their children's rights in the educational area. Today in the Supreme Court, the report and the decision was issued. So where we finished in 1990, we see the follow-up today. We see not much happening, really, in the last 30 years. Not much of any broad significance. What instead we see are Band-Aids put on issues brought to legislators by local constituents. This isn't working for me, let's fix that little issue. And what we don't have is a parallel to the most important planning document in the last century around individuals who experience disability. And that's the 1962 Kennedy study on programs for individuals with disabilities. Burton Blatt out of SUNY, Wolf Wolfensberger out of Toronto, and most important, Elizabeth Boggs, who absolutely amazing woman, mother of an adult child with disabilities, who was the advisor to 7 presidents on disability issues. Elizabeth, amazing. I worked with her for quite a few years. At age 85, she took her first trip down the Grand Canyon for two weeks on a raft. An amazing, big, tall, imposing woman. Reminds me of Evelyn Chapman in many respects. That was a comprehensive plan, largely sponsored by the Kennedy Foundation, on services with disabilities. At no point since 1962 have we had a comprehensive plan focusing on all service needs for all disabilities. And absent that kind of a plan, what we've done is put Band-Aids on problems. And I really appreciate the willingness of legislators to at least address and put Band-Aids on those problems. And let's not say that's a terrible thing, because they have been responsive and concerned. But what we lack is a comprehensive vision, not just of services for individuals who experience IDD, but for individuals who also have sensory impairments and who have acquired disabilities like traumatic brain injury or spinal cord injuries, and for individuals who have age-related or illness-related disabilities. And we focus on all of their needs. We don't look at special education. Oh, we've got to add more money there. You know, we need to change the entire way special education is established. We have systemic. We've got to get rid of labeling, because labeling inherently segregates. We've got to change the way the funding formula works, because as long as we have a separate funding formula for special education and regular education, the programs will be separated. Programs follow money. It's an unfortunate reality. And more importantly, We need to change the way teachers are educated, because as long as we educate teachers to do this program and other teachers to do this program, there will be a separation, a segregation in education. We have to bring the programs together. That's a structural issue. That's a big structural issue in post-secondary education. So if that isn't part of the plan on education, it's not going to work. It won't take us into the future. It'll just create more of what we have now. And we have to look at residents. We have to look at the delivery of service. That is personal service to individuals who need help to live individually, and provide just the help they need based on what they tell us they need instead of what we decide they need. We have to fund that in a community setting that is real, not the creation of homes in a community that are isolated and separated from their neighbors. We have to provide meaningful jobs and the access to meaningful jobs that are useful. Now, all of this has to be done in a comprehensive plan brought together by not just leaders from this room, but leaders in unions, and leaders from business, and leaders from housing, leaders from all of the groups. This is a tough sell, folks. But without this kind of comprehensive planning, we won't be able to overcome the difficulties that our history shows us are real. The history based on the experiences and the journeys that you have faced and that the families have faced. Not the history that our program administrators tell us is wonderful. We've served so many people. We've done this, we've done that. Come on, I want to hear from the families that are served. I want to hear from the service receivers' side what the problems are. Because they're the real people we're trying to assist to become more community involved. You know, Lucy Gwynn, I mentioned her, Nothing About Us Without Us. She had a name for people who lived off the disability community. She called them fund suckers. People who sucked money out of the disability community to serve themselves, to head organizations that gave them fancy cars and fancy titles, instead of providing direct services. We have folks who are absolutely well-meaning, who do tremendous jobs for all of these organizations. But without this coalescence, without this focus, you know, I hate studies. You know, we're going to do another study and put it on the bookshelf, and then we'll do another one in a couple of years, and then we'll do it. It reminds me of Seattle's focus on mass transit. I mean, we did studies for I don't know how many years to try and develop mass transit in Seattle. We never did it. Finally, we're doing it. I don't want to create another study that's going to sit on the shelf, but I do think we need to create a comprehensive plan that brings all of these elements together with an awareness of the history of what's worked and awareness of the people we need to bring to the table. And that's what the history shows us. Thank you very much.